Hi, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. Today, my guest is Lee Schwartz, and I have to tell you that this is not the first time that I have interviewed Lee. I actually interviewed him last week, and when I went to stop the recording after the conversation, it started recording, and I had this awful moment of realization that we had this entire lovely conversation and none of it was recorded for all of you to hear. It was my worst podcasting nightmare playing out in real life. But fortunately for me and for all of you, Lee is a very kind and a patient person, and he feels strongly enough about the message that he wants to share that he's willing to come and do a repeat of our conversation last week. And although I think there has also been some interesting information that has come out in the interim that will be added to today's conversation. So I'm looking forward to this conversation again and for all of you to get to hear it for the first time. So I'm mostly over the embarrassment and distress of last week's mistake and happy to introduce you to my wonderful new guest, or my wonderful new friend and guest, Lee Schwartz. Lee is a speaker, author, advocate, and proud father of two NFL players, Jeffrey and Mitchell. In his inspiring book, Raising Giants, Lee shares the real-life story of how love, discipline, and vision helped shape his sons into the elite athletes and grounded men that they are. Lee sits on the West Coast Advisory Board of the Concussion and CTE Foundation. Founded in 2007, the foundation has been deeply committed to researching and studying the causes of CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, with the goal of it one day, hopefully sooner than later, being diagnosed in the living. It's currently only diagnosable postmortem, which would lead to prevention, treatment, or even a cure. So we're all very grateful for your kindness, Lee, and thanks for being here again.
Thank you for the original invitation, and thanks again for the redo.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
So why don't we have you start with telling us a little bit more about yourself? So where are you from? What do you love? A little bit more about your family, things like that.
Sure. So I live in Los Angeles. I've lived here since I started college at UCLA back in the day. I have two sons, Jeffrey and Mitchell, who both played in the NFL, which has somewhat prompted this whole passion for CTE and concussions. So fortunate enough to have these two wonderful children who started playing football in high school and continued on into college and professional ranks. My wife and I watched their every step and every movement. You know, she wonders, whether she was a bad mom for allowing her mutant children to play football, but they were predisposed to do that given they were 6'6" and 6'5" and athletically talented. And so they both played 8+ years in the league. Like I say, we followed them. I did a calculation for my book, and I had attended over 200 games from high school through the pros, and just lived somewhat vicariously and surreal through them to bring me to today.
Amazing. And I think, so football was has obviously had a very strong impact on your family and your life. And you didn't play earlier, is that right?
I did not play. I'm Jewish, and my Jewish mother was afraid that I was going to get hurt, even though I was the third largest kid in the high school at the time, probably. And so she said, "No, you can't play." And maybe she was aware. I mean, she had some psychic abilities. I could share stories that would put goosebumps on your arms, but maybe she kind of knew what was going on later in life. But she said no, so I didn't play.
Okay. So you got to live vicariously through your kiddos who did play.
Yes.
That's awesome. What I would be interested in hearing what prompted the book. Let's start there because I want to hear more about on the concussion side of things, but
Sure.
the book is what led to your learning about that, I believe. So yeah, let's tell us about the
Yeah.
book.
The book was prompted by this incredible journey for 20 years that we had with the boys and wanting to share it with my grandkids because Jeffrey, my older son, Alex, my grandson, was born late in his career and will not remember anything about Jeffrey playing.
Mm,
My granddaughter came after he retired. Mitchell's two kids came after he retired. So I thought it'd be great just to have a story to tell that they would know about their dad and their uncle. And then as I wrote the book, it came to me that there's some messaging in here that I thought would be appropriate for families who might be going through the same thing as we went through. Although the landscape is different today with football, college football, with the NIL, the portals, and everything, there's still some consistency to it that I thought would help parents and their kids have a better idea of what this whole process might be like. And then it dawned on me that maybe the football fanatic, fan is short for fanatic, would like to know some of the stories, the backstories, things that they don't know about.
mm.
And so I just started writing and ultimately put it together and decided to have it published as opposed to just being a memoir for the family.
I love it. That's so I think that's so great. And I know that there is value in hearing other people's stories and experiences. It definitely makes a difference for people who hear that and can impact people's lives in very positive ways. So I think that's
Yeah,
so wonderful that you are doing that.
great.
Yeah, that's so cool. And tell me how did that lead to your well, actually in all of this in your children's careers in football, did they have concussions or issues that you were aware of?
To my knowledge, no concussions. Now, I will say that we have learned over time, writing the book was part of that, that there were some injuries that occurred that were not shared with their parents along the way.
Weird.
But to my knowledge, no, they did not. And actually, they were very cautious, Mitchell particularly. Those that watch football games will likely see the frequency of teammates slapping their teammate in the helmet after a good play.
Mm,
Mitchell wouldn't allow that. Mitchell would pull his head away, but beforehand would tell all his teammates, do not slap me in the head.
mm,
And I think that was his way of dealing with some of this.
mm.
So again, the answer, no, no concussions that I'm aware of.
Okay. Um, and so has this been kind of are you is it surprising to you at all that this passion for helping people understand about concussions and CTE, given the fact that it wasn't something that you guys dealt with personally. It's a little bit interesting. So how is that for you?
Okay, well, let me go back a bit. So when Jeffrey and Mitchell began playing football, I recall correctly, it was 2000, 2003. CT wasn't first diagnosed until 2005.
Mm,
Mike Webster, offensive lineman center for the Pittsburgh Steelers, was the first one who was diagnosed, and that was 2005. And at that point, no one knew whether it'd be a passing fad or lead to where it is today. So when my wife and I thought about football, and of course, being the mom, she more concerned than me, I'd say, but we're all concerned about below the neck injuries, backs,
mm,
knees, ankles, and never thought about anything related to the brain. And then when it became a more visible disease, they were adults, they were playing, they were already in the league, and it was their decision as to what to do. No longer we as parents could direct them. And so we've gone down that path. And what occurred is in the promotion of my book, I was introduced to Chris Nowinski, who is the co-founder and CEO of the Concussion and CTE Foundation. And we started to exchange emails and we had a conversation and we just kept in touch. This was late last year. And then he invited me to a summit. It was the first annual CTE summit put on by the foundation that was up in San Francisco, so just up the coast from me. And he
mm,
said, why don't you come join? And I thought, it's in my backyard, basically, who knows what I'll learn. So I decided to go. And I spent the entire day from, like 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, listening to researchers, clinicians, doctors, former players, Chris and others within the foundation talk about what they're doing and what's going on, what the current research is. There was also, the foundation is connected to Boston University, who has a brain bank there, where people who have played football or other sports can send their brain postmortem, because it is not diagnosable in the living, to have it studied. And so her name is Ann McKee. So Ann was there and spoke. At the end of the day, Chris came up to me and said, "What'd you think?" And I had a one-word response, and that was sobering. To realize what's going on. There was a former player there, former NFL Hall of Famer, defensive lineman Warren Sapp, who was speaking, and he came because he said he's in treatment. And so you begin to hear those things, and it's like, this is real. And thank goodness so far, my kids show no evidence of any problem. But I thought this might be something to get more involved with. So a little bit after my attendance at the summit, I said to Chris, I'd like to get involved. And he invited me to be on the West Coast Advisory Board. And since then, it's turned into very much a passion project for me.
That's so amazing. And if I remember right, this summit was just this past February, like just a few
Just
months
this
ago.
past February.
Yeah.
Yep, the second one is already on calendar down here at UCLA. Obviously, I will be there and bringing as many people as I can to hear what's new and what's going on.
Yeah. I think that's so amazing that it went from, you started the book process for your family and then, oh, wait a second, I think this could benefit other people too. So then you make it a published work, and then it leads to this, and now this is like such a passion thing for you. It's cool to see that progression and to hear your enthusiasm for it. Like I can tell that this is very important to you. And I would love to hear, like, what is the main message? Like, what is it after you've learned all of this information, after your eyes were open and you felt so it was sobering to learn all of that? What is it that you want to get out there to people so that they know?
Yeah, so CT obviously is not going away. As a matter of fact, it's going to be proven in time that it's more prevalent than anybody wants to recognize, probably, or people outside the Concussion Foundation and others. And so there's some realities to this whole process, and that is you've got an NFL, a $23 billion a year enterprise that doesn't want to really accept that it exists to the level it does. You got the NCAA, who doesn't want to admit that either. There was an NCAA trial recently in which the attorney representing the NCAA called CTE a hypothetical disease. I'd very much like him to talk to the mother, who I heard recently, a 33-year-old son who passed away fairly recently, former hockey player, professional hockey player, who started off her comments by saying, "I hope you don't think I'm a miserable person." However, when he got killed by the car, I was actually glad he did, because he was suffering so badly. Okay. And he was autopsied and he had CTE. I'm not sure what level, but there are 4 levels, 4 being the worst. And, he had at least stage 2, maybe stage 3. So you hear those stories and it's like, oh my God, where's this going? So there are some obstacles in the way. So my advocacy is to the parents of youth who want to play any kind of contact youth sports. And that's football, that's soccer, that's rugby, lacrosse, ice hockey. And before allowing your kid to get involved, at least study, research, educate to know what the possibilities are. To learn that every year younger somebody plays football, there's a greater chance of them with onset CT later on in their life. Just come up with the facts. And there are facts now. It's not just, pull it out of the sky. The research over the years has given some real statistics that parents can look at and then make a conscious decision about whether they should let their offspring play. There are alternatives. There's flag football now. You can get almost everything from flag football that you can from tackle football, except you're not banging your child's head around. So that's my ultimate message is, parents, you owe it to your children, you owe it to yourself to research it, educate it, In my book, I wrote in a section what I called pillars of success for success. And the seventh and last one says, and I don't have it down precisely, but close enough. And this is directed at parents. Make decisions based on what's best for your child, not what's best for you. Because so many parents want their kid to be the next coming of the next greatest player in whatever sport they're going to be, or they want to watch them vicariously, which I did too, and I understand that. But when I did it, I didn't know that there were these possible repercussions later on. That information is available now. You can't sweep it under the carpet. It needs to be considered very strongly. So that's the ultimate message.
Thank you. I'm curious, do you have specific advice for those parents other than just do the research? Like if you could go back in time, would your kids have played?
So that's an interesting question. And I've written a couple of blogs that I understand will be published very soon on the foundation website. And the title of which is, What Would My Decision Be Today? And candidly, it's hard to divorce the experience of 20 years in making that decision.
Yeah.
My kids didn't play youth football. One, they were too big. They were beyond the weight limit when we considered it. And number two, because we're Jewish, there were bar mitzvah lessons, and that took precedent over all the practices and games that would have been required. So they went to play it anyway. But so I didn't have to make that decision, or I made it basically. So certainly today, in today's world, the advocacy from the foundation is no youth contact sport until 14. And I mentioned Warren Sapp, the NFL Hall of Famer who now is in treatment for CTE. I went up to him after his presentation and I said, Warren, if a parent came up to you today and asked, should my kid play contact sports or Pop Warner football particularly, what would you say? And his first response was, how old are they? I said, does it really matter? He said, yeah. He said, 14 and under. Not let them play. Because that's where the statistics are leading us.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I know that there are strong opinions about these things, very strong opinions. And I think it's important to say and put out there, and I know you of all people really understand this, but there are some really, really good things that come from organized sports, right? Like
Without
you have a whole
doubt.
book about some of the great things that came for your family and your boys out of that experience. So I know that people get very passionate about football in particular, but any sport really, like people really love it. And there are really good reasons to really love it. There's a lot of good that comes from those kinds of organized team sports. And I think that the important point here that you're making and that I want people to hear is those are fantastic. We love those sports. But if we can do them in a way that does not require contact, especially if they're under 14, then that is very important to be aware of and very important to be advocating for and to consider in your decisions for your kids. So did that summarize it okay? What are your thoughts on that?
You're absolutely right. There is so much positive about it. The teamwork that's involved, the collaboration, the time management, the working through difficult situations. There are just so many positives about playing team sports. So I'm not suggesting don't, but especially young, find something alternatively that they can do. Warren Sapp said he didn't play till 16, but his playing allowed him to get out of his impoverished neighborhood. And I didn't have to face that, but I know many parents do. That's the way out for their child. So that's what makes the decision making so challenging. And then there's the risk reward, as I would call it, to it all. I know it again from a football frame of perspective. I once heard a athletic director for a college be asked a question about what are the chances of a high school football player making it to the NFL. And he said there are about 1.1 million high school football players if you took a snapshot. And today that's about the same thing. So it hasn't changed too much. And then he gave a percentage of how many made it to college, how many made it to pros, and how many played 10 years in the NFL. That 10 years is a real benchmark. You've made your second, if not your third contract, so you're financially well-heeled. You've probably been a starter the whole time, so you've had this lengthy career. So out of 1.1 million, if you had to guess what the number was on the last stage, how many made it 10 years or more? What would you say?
I remember last time I had guessed about a couple hundred, a few hundred maybe.
Yeah, the answer was 11. So that's 0.0001, three zeros and a 1%.
Jeez.
So when you look at it that way and you add that into it, or you look at each year, I think there's, if I remember the statistics correctly, 400,000 Pop Warner football players or youth football players. The last draft or the drafts, the NFL have about 240, 250 guys drafted. So think about these numbers.
Mm.
So it's a long-term play as well. There's a lot of benefit in the short term. They learn a lot about life while they play, but then what are they subject to later on? And now we're finding more and more younger players and coming down with problems. Jeffrey says he has some former teammates who are already showing some signs of struggle,
Mhm.
you know.
And
So,
yeah, well, and it is such an important thing for people to consider. And it's, you mentioned Warren Sapp, he started when he was 16 and he's still dealing with it. So it's not like 14 is necessarily a magic number. There's a lot of things that play into it. It's like the number of hits and probably anyway, there's
yeah, they still don't look. There's more questions yet than answers. And
mhm,
that's why the research is so important and why the added information that is coming out is also pertinent because there's things they don't know. How much does genetics play into it? I asked Ann McKee, the woman who's the head of the brain bank, why there are certain football players quarterbacks who played decades ago, who are known to have major concussions and numerous concussions, are still on TV and broadcasting. Troy Aikman comes to mind. He's one of the top ones, and there are others. And so I specifically asked about him and others, and her response was, I don't have an answer for you. We don't know how much genetics plays a part in it. I mean, how come some people get cancer and some people don't? How
right.
come some people get dementia and some people don't?
Yeah.
That's what the foundation is trying to identify as best they can, better ways to maybe quantify all this as to what
Yeah.
the chances are.
I'm so grateful that people are doing research on that. And yeah, I think that uh, it is good to just be aware as parents, be aware of what those options are. And if there are ways that you can have your kid, it's not like the kid starting earlier is necessarily, like you were saying, the chances are so small. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have a greater chance of getting into the big leagues from starting sooner. And there's a lot more potential damage to their brain. So let's consider our baby's
Yeah,
brains as we're
yeah.
doing all of this.
Well,
Um,
that's it. I mean, Chris gave me a visual of what the brain was going through and what it does go through when it gets hit. I mean, it's not fixed in place, right? The brain moves.
mhm,
And particularly with young kids, it's still developing. So it's less resistant to damage and trauma. Um, and their neck muscles are not strong as youth. Their helmets, when they play Pop Warner, are pretty close, if not at the lower end of what they are for in weight to the NFL. And so when they get hit on one side of the head, let's say, the brain contacts the one side, but then there's a contra movement to the other side, and it now gets hit twice. And a
mhm,
lot of the hits and what they're still trying to determine is the big concussion type hits, concussive hits, where you see people who don't get up off the ground, who are wobbling when they get up and start walking. Or there's the non-concussive hits where the damage isn't evident. And so you don't see it, so you don't maybe stay away from the game for a while and let it heal because it takes time to heal. And that's the other big component of this is that the little hits, the accumulation of the little hits, which is what you would see likely in the youth who are banging their heads on the ground when they fall or getting tackled and not knowing how to you tackle correctly and not knowing how to keep their head out of the way.
mhm. Yes, thank you. It's important for people to understand all of that. And I think if can you share some of the things, you were saying that your son, some of his teammates are maybe showing some signs of these, what signs would people be looking for? Like, what are the indications that somebody might be dealing with some of CTE?
Memory issues, um, headaches and things like that. I have a list somewhere. I mean, actually, I don't have it in front of me that I
Yeah.
could send, which kind of showed what those symptoms might be, and they progress through the stages.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to
Yes.
send that to you if you'd
Yeah,
like.
we can put it in the show notes, but I want people to know too that mental health issues are a big part of this too, the depression, anxiety,
That's part of it
things
too.
like
Yeah.
that you people might not know can be related to head injuries. So that's something that I feel very strongly about getting out there is, and I know you and I have both talked with Bruce Parkman, who does the Max Parkman Foundation. Who actually had a son who took his life because of um, the mental health concerns that came from having brain injuries and concussions. And so I just want
Yeah.
people to be aware this is very serious and it is really something to be aware of and be looking at.
And I would advise that if parents see a change in behavior with their kids, however limited, don't just cast it aside and think, oh, it's just one episode. Be aware and continue to look at it. And if you think it's progressing or you think it's becoming more frequent, the Concussion and CT Foundation has a helpline that you can call at any time, and they can help walk you through what some of this is. Because some of the feedback I've gotten from parents of loved ones who have passed is they just wish they knew what their loved one was going through when all of a sudden their personality changed and they were afraid everybody's watching them and or they were depressed or other things and they didn't know why it was happening and so couldn't deal with it emotionally and couldn't provide the help necessary. The help is there. And the National Football League, I think, has a helpline too, but those are for the former players. But for the general population, if parents are detecting any change in their child's behavior and attitude, it's a private call. Get on the phone and check it out. I mean, the foundation just sent out some information about two 17-year-olds that were found with CTE. And the fact that they were found with CTE meant that they had passed away, right?
Mhm.
17 years old. And there was a recent case where a 15-year-old, the youngest ever identified, had CTE.
It's heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. So yes, thank you for
Yeah,
putting
yeah.
that out there. And we can link to the foundation and to the helpline. And I want people who are listening to listen to other episodes of this podcast. I've interviewed so many people who provide care for people with concussions specifically. There's such a need and there's so much help that is available and healing that can happen. It just needs to be
Yeah.
addressed. So it's not
It's
just going
great
to
that you're
magically
doing
go
that.
away. So
Yeah,
thank
no, it
you.
doesn't, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I want people to be aware there is hope, there is help, and so be aware that it is a thing, and be looking for the help that's going to be effective for your loved one or for you, because it is out there and it is important. I'm curious. If you don't know the answer, that's totally fine. But I'm curious. Do we know why it's only diagnosable postmortem?
They just because they have to, at least at this point, they have to study the brain tissue,
Okay.
and they're only getting at the brain tissue post-mortem. There are no, like spinal fluid tests or blood tests, but they're working towards that. And there is progress towards
Good.
being able to identify CT in a living person, but it's not there yet.
Okay, thank you. And it is, I believe I've seen pictures of, brains and a brain with CT it is neurodegenerative. The brain tissue is actually has shrunken, right? Like, am I
Yeah,
describing that
well, sure. I
accurately?
just I just got this. I don't know if you can see it, but
Yes,
here
this.
is a progression
So if people are
of what
watching on
CT
YouTube, you
is.
can see it, but otherwise, yeah, we can maybe post this or something.
You
If
can
or
see, yeah,
it'll be
you
on
can
the
see the
website.
progression
Yeah.
and how the brain, and I'm still asking some questions of what this actually means, that the brown part, is that just cell degeneration? Is that the tau protein buildups that have gone awry? So I'm trying to find out, but you can see the progression
Yeah.
from stage one, which has a couple of dots, to, big parts of the brain, brown in color,
Mm.
showing that it's diseased.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I think I want people to know also I will link it in the show notes as well. There are a couple podcasts that I have done about CTE as well. I interviewed Julia Manning from the Concussion and CTE Foundation. She shared her personal experience with concussion and more about CTE and concussions. And that was a really great interview. She did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
And then
I just exchanged an email with her just about 2 hours ago.
oh, perfect. Yeah, she's great. I really like her.
Yeah.
And then I also interviewed a friend of mine her brother played college football and then ended up passing away, and they sent his brain to Boston University, and he was diagnosed with CTE as well. And so a
Yeah. Yeah.
personal experience with that as well
Yeah.
on the podcast that I will post with Laura Dyer. She did a fantastic job of
Yeah.
sharing as well. So this is
Yeah.
a real thing. I want people to be aware of it, and I appreciate the passion that you have for getting this information out there as well. It's important, and
Great.
people need to know. Absolutely. I think, is there anything else that you want to make sure that people hear or understand about DE, concussions, football, your experience, anything that we haven't covered yet?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. Again, the bottom line is educate yourself as a parent, educate yourself. You owe it to yourself and to your kids to know what they're getting into. And if you choose to do it, you've made the choice with awareness as opposed to just blindly going into the night, shall we say.
Yeah. Oh, actually, the study that came out between last week and this week, do you want to share what we learned?
Oh, yeah, there was a study that was shared by the foundation, which I'll read it directly. It says neurodegenerative mortality was nearly 4 times higher in NFL players compared to the general population. And that was, curious because they also said that investigations of elite athletes have identified lower all-cause mortality in NFL players compared to the general population, including a lower proportion of deaths from cancer, cardiovascular disease, injury, violence, and all other causes. So in general, football players are healthier, except now they're showing that their brains are subject to more disease than the general population.
So fascinating and heartbreaking, but super interesting, especially given what you were saying earlier about, in the past, people were concerned about the neck down. And that's, very, very interesting.
And still a concern. I mean,
Yes, of
my kids have
course.
shared with me that the only day they're healthy in the year is basically the day before they start camp in the summer. That's the only time they're healthy
They
throughout the
finally
entire football
recovered from
season.
everything else.
They recovered from everything else, and they haven't played football for months, but the day before is their healthiest of the whole football season.
Yeah, it does a number on your body, but the concern that we're aware of now and discussing and trying to get out there is the number it does on the brain. So be aware of that, and informed as you're making decisions, parents out there and others. So thank you so much for what you're sharing, for the passion with which you do it. And
thank you too.
And we'll link to your book, and if people want to hear more from you, is that something you're up for having them
They're
reach
welcome.
out?
Yeah, I'm open to that. That'd be great. Yeah, you can, you want me to share it now, or do you want me to just send you well, you have my email address.
Yeah, go ahead and share it now, and then we'll put it in the show notes too.
Yeah, my email address, actually, we'll do it to the book side of it. So send it to Lee at Raising Giants Book, all consecutive.com.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. And we'll put that in the show notes as well.
And then the Concussion and CTE Foundation, like I think I mentioned earlier, but it's just one continuous concussion and CTE.org.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
And we'll put that in the show notes as well. So thanks again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.